We talk about our Zazen, our sitting, as being just sitting, in the way that we often talk about ourselves being just this. And I thought I'd start talking about Zazen by asking what we think we mean by this just. There's a nice kind of ambiguity in this English word. Has many different meanings, but even in the sense we're using it here. If I say I'm just sitting, do I mean I'm only sitting? That's all I'm doing, I'm only sitting. Or do I mean I'm kind of simply sitting? That's kind of the question that runs through this talk a bit. Just one way of thinking about it. And I want to just from slightly different angles try and tease out when we're sitting, what's that to do with being separate or being not separate? Does it keep coming back to not separate as almost being a theme of Zen? So how is sitting separate or not separate? And of course separate from what? So, Zazen instruction. Two favourite Zazen instructions. Sit down, shut up. Simple, to the point. And, well, true. In a sense, what else is there to do? I like that it has the sense of, well, yeah, then whatever happens, happens. And that whatever is our Zazen. Yeah, absolutely. But what does happen when we sit down and we shut up, at least outwardly? Well, there's Barry's beautiful little saying, basic Zazen instruction, you can't do it wrong. But of course we always think we can do it wrong. In fact, many of us, much of the time, think we are doing it wrong, and that's whether we've been sitting for 5 minutes or 20 years. The second part of that, you can't do it wrong. It's like the way you look in the mirror and your face appears. You don't have to do anything. You can't do your face wrong. It's just there, automatically. That I like too. Because, as Barry says, so, it's great. My face is there. Now I want to do something with it. I want to start peering at it. I want to start judging it. I want to see how it fits in with the background. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because immediately we're talking about, oh yeah, sit down and shut up. But as soon as I'm sat down, I'm looking. I'm judging. And I'm judging, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is this worth doing? Why on earth am I doing this? And if we're sitting with other people, we'll be adding to that. They're all doing it right. I'm doing it wrong. Or possibly I'm doing it right and they're all doing it wrong. So what we're doing here is, in Barry's phrase, we're bringing attention to what we're doing when we're not doing anything, when we have just sat down and we've shut up. And the doing that we're still doing. Because really, Zazen is just about being present. And of course there is stuff to do with Zazen, which isn't that simple. It's like when I sit, do my legs go to sleep? Do I get a bad back? Do I find myself constantly thinking about the same damn thing all the time? Should I be? Well, Dogen's instructions on Zazen are quite clear. You sit in full lotus, that's what you do. And certain traditions of Soto Zen will suggest that no, that is what you do, and that's basically what you have to do. And if you're not up to that, well, you do the best you can, because that's what Zazen is. Joko's basic instruction was sit still, as in don't wriggle, don't move. And she could be quite a severe taskmaster in this respect, you know. Okay, your knee's been screaming at you for the past 15 minutes or the past 5 sessions. So what? Is that a problem? Well, it is a problem. No. Okay. Again, Barry doesn't teach it that way. I don't teach it that way. But, so how are we going to sit, and how are we going to sit comfortably? And obviously, you know, in real life, it makes very little difference whether I'm sat in full lotus, whether I'm sat Burmese style with my legs loosely crossed in front of me, whether I'm sat in Seiza with my sat on my knees with my ankles behind me, whether I'm sat in a chair, whether I'm using a meditation bench. The only really important points are that I'm stable, that I'm balanced, that I could move if I wanted to, which makes my stillness, because I do sit still, because I really am trying to sit still, and come back and periodically correct my posture. That's really the essence of what I'm doing in that respect, the technical respect. When I say correct my posture, so some posture right and some posture wrong. Well, only in the sense that if I sit with a curved forward spine, I'm going to get backache. If I sit too straight, I'm probably going to get backache. If I'm straining all the time, then that's physical tension, and physical tension is going to manifest as emotional tension. If I'm slouched, I'm going to go to sleep, or my chest's going to collapse, and I'll be, it's going to be really quite hard and heavy. All of these, they're kind of really simple stuff. And they're the kind of technique side that, well, actually we learn, we can get good at. And a couple of weeks ago, we were doing a guided body meditation, and that's the kind of stuff you can get good at. When we start doing this kind of stuff, it may be a revelation to find that we have feet, and that you can actually feel those feet, and you can feel your toes separately and this kind of thing, and that's marvellous. Listen to the sounds around us, really begin to discriminate levels and different, like a 64-track mixer or something, and move between, or I can feel, all of this awareness is kind of fantastic, and it's worth cultivating for its own sake. But at the same time, it all contributes to this sense of full awareness, but it's not the point. That's not what we're doing it for. And when we make of any technique the point, or when we make, as my mother might have said, a thing of it, we've lost it. We've lost the pointlessness that is Zazen. And there are more techniques. Joko recommends thought labeling. You have a thought, thinking about breakfast. Thinking about when the bell's going to go. Again, Barry doesn't teach this way because he wants no distractions. No distractions at all. And yes, thought labeling can become a distraction. But equally, it's useful. Just observe that flow of thoughts. I never knew I had so many thoughts. Wow, that's a thing. It's all about becoming present, finding out what's really happening in this body, this mind as I'm sitting. Zazen just as this kind of control space, almost laboratory space. What happens in Zazen is Zazen. whatever happens. And so we get to the idea, yeah, absolutely, no good sittings, no bad sittings. Some I will enjoy, some I will hate, some I will absolutely feel I failed to engage at any level. Some I might find mystical revelation. In terms of Zazen, it's basically all just Zazen. And I may find that what felt pointless reveals insight. Equally, what felt wonderful was just a distraction. It's all part of this ongoing and evolving process. Talking about the whole, holding the whole, the all, as the 5 Buddhist skandhas, the aggregates, these piles, heaps have it. Sensations, perceptions, thoughts. Yeah, being aware of it all. Now, some meditation traditions are much more about focus, bringing the concentration down to a point, one thing at the expense of all others. And our ordinary mind way of sitting Zazen is much more to do with the width, holding it all. That doesn't preclude focusing. Just as I said, thought labelling is a useful practice. Don't make it your whole practice, but it's a useful practice. Equally, there are places where Joko recommends, no, focus down on that cobweb up by the ceiling coving. Why? Because when I'm focusing on that, I'm coming back. I'm becoming present to this moment again. And we know that so much of meditation is actually wandering off, returning, losing, returning, getting distracted, returning. And within that, focus is quite a useful strategy. But again, it's a strategy. It's another technique we can learn. It's not the point. Because ultimately, in that sense, the return is the point. And while we can, I'll say take an object. I can take my breath as my object. If I'm a Tibetan, I might be imagining the image of a wondrous bodhisattva as my object. Or actually, I can become the breath as I breathe. And this is where I get back to separate and not separate. And this is a kind of subtle point, but in a way it's getting close to the heart of what we're doing. When I'm breathing, am I an observer? Observing this body or this thought purely? So there's a sense of separation, subject, object. Or is there a sense in which, actually I am this breath. There's no me somewhere else floating up there observing this breath. There's this body breathing, and there's awareness of this body breathing. In that sense, how can I not be this breath? And yet, I'm so often imagining a distance. And in fact, it's even true when I'm listening to the birds. It's not that I am the birds, but I am the bird song. We'll come back to that. Joko points, and I keep coming back to this because it is important, to my resistance to being just this moment, to being just this. What's that resistance? That resistance is whatever point that I'm noticing that something is not as I would wish it to be. I don't want to keep thinking this thought. I don't want to keep sitting on this cushion. I don't want my knee to hurt. And that in actual fact, that is obviously the most wonderful point of presence. And again, each of those moments, each of those instances, I have this opportunity to draw back from it, to turn away from this. That's not me. I don't want this, and just push it away. Or just allow myself to stay with it. Perhaps to become it, perhaps just to stay in relation to it. This is the real work of Zazen, and Zazen can be work. Sometimes it's a lot of work just staying, being. And so no shame if I find I've zoned out. No shame if I find I've distracted myself. No shame if I find I've turned away. What's my task then? Just return. Just a literal return of awareness. Maybe staring at the cobweb will help. Maybe just, oh, here I am. Just this. Maybe that's enough. Now the word resistance is bad. We don't want resistance. I mean, kind of engineering, basic physics is the obvious thing. Eliminate resistance, eliminate friction, perpetual motion, fantastic. The ultimate, the beyond. But as I've said, this resistance is our wake-up call. Resistance is our presence. Resistance is our aliveness. And because we find so much of our resistance is to do with thought, and there is a tradition of silence, and we use silence as a word, we describe what's happening in Zazen, we get this idea of, well, yeah, if only my thoughts would stop, that would be fine. If I can make my thoughts stop, that's the point. That's what I'm trying to do. And that may happen for a few seconds, may happen for an hour. The great Japanese teacher, Okumura, says, well, after I've done a 14-day retreat, sitting, I don't know, whatever he sits, 18 hours a day, basically I'm not thinking anything. But that's not better than when he's setting up the sesshin, or when he's cleaning out his rice bowl, or giving a talk. It's not about something else, something separate, something special. Thoughts come, thoughts go. No judgment in this sense, no good, no bad. Just this. In fact, when we come back to control, it's easy to think of meditation as a gaining control, or an attempt to gain control. And this is exactly what we're not trying to do in the ordinary mind tradition. Mastery tells me I must control everything in the world, bring it to my way. A kind of halfway philosophy like Stoicism says, I cannot control the world, but I can control my mind. I can learn thought control. I can learn emotion control. But that's not what we're trying to do either. This is where it gets interesting. I'm not trying to control anything. Because as soon as I exercise control, I'm splitting. I'm separating out into my will and the world. Whether I'm applying that will to another person, or to myself, to my body, to my mind. What we're doing with our Zazen is getting lost, returning, like the tide of my awareness flowing out, flowing back in, or like my breath flowing out, flowing back in. Being this breath, being this movement, allowing myself to be. When I was I used to go on retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, one of his senior monastics, Sister Annabelle. It was very family-centred, so there were always lots of children around. When you have children around, there's quite a lot of noise. He said, don't worry about the children. Don't worry about the noise. Just treat it like birdsong. And in a sense, that's what the whole of our Zazen is. It's this body, this mind, these thoughts, this life, this world as birdsong. Sometimes it's the kind of a crow. Sometimes it's the wonderful song of a blackbird at 5 o'clock in the morning. But it's all birdsong. Some of it we love, some of it not so much, but it's all birdsong. It's what finds us, what we welcome as not separate. This is where I get back to this wonderful phrase of Dogen's from Genjo Khan. And this is pretty much how I see it. Conveying oneself towards all things to carry out practice enlightenment is delusion. Yeah, I'm going to do this. All things coming and carrying out practice enlightenment through the self, through this awareness, is realization. Will I allow this to happen? Will I listen to the bird song? So when I become the bird song, when I become my resistance, when I allow the tide, allow the breath, allow the bird song, I become the world, not as its tyrant or its dictator. I just become not separate in my Zazen. But here's the kick. And for once it's a good kick. Even in my sense of separation, my sense of resistance to my knee, or that repetitive thought, or just this general sense of dissatisfaction, even in my awareness of that resistance, I'm entering into relationship with it. And if I allow that relationship with it, I already recognize that I'm not separate. Even my resistance is practice enlightenment, is realization. It's just this, Zazen. The whole world. Birdsong. So let's sit.